Thank you for the introduction, Anne, and it is my great pleasure to be with you today for the 2022 Freedom Summit. As mentioned, I'm the Executive Director of Pregnancy Care Canada, and we are a national best practice Christian affiliation of over 80 pregnancy care centres, extending from PEI to Vancouver Island. And what we do at Pregnancy Care Canada is help establish, equip, train, and encourage local centres to do the good work they do every day. And so the title of my talk today is Keeping a Hope-Filled, Christ-Centered Stride in Uncertain Times. And for those of us in this field, these are uncertain times, but we press on in the certainty and hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I have such a deep belief in the vital support provided by local pregnancy care centers that in 2016, I left my family practice after 22 years to take on this role. And I love it. I never thought about abortion, even after completing my medical degree and learning about the miraculous details of fetal development. I knew about the DNA blueprint established at the moment of conception, a unique life never to be repeated. I knew the embryology, that the heart begins to beat at 3 weeks from conception, and that a baby's fingerprints can be seen at 12 weeks. I understood all the scientific facts, but they were separate from my understanding of abortion. Our medical education was more of a hands-off approach rather than the typical informed decision-making approach used in healthcare. I also never considered the impact of abortion on women, nor did I ask my patients how they felt afterwards. Gradually, this conflict hit me, and I never want to forget God's grace in gently revealing to me the beauty and dignity of all life. It first began when I met Sarah, a young girl with Down syndrome who impacted everyone around her with her sweet and contagious manner, and it made me question the prenatal screening used to target such a life. Around this time, my friend Jen connected with me. She was adopted at birth and had recently met her birth mother. And as Jen listened to her birth mother's difficult journey, she knew her life had a purpose which included helping young women like her birth mother who were pregnant, alone, and unsupported. Her call intersected with my awareness that practical alternatives and support are needed to ensure any woman dealing with an unexpected pregnancy truly has options, not just abortion. We can tell someone they have a choice, but choice has to look like something. We can't simply say, consider all of your pregnancy options. How does a 17-year-old process those words when she's terrified of telling her parents and missing out on her school and career dreams? In response to this, I was part of a small team that established a local pregnancy center in our town, a safe place providing clients with accurate information on all pregnancy options, adoption, abortion, parenting, a place where patients were given practical support, not just for the crisis, but also afterwards, a place where even if an individual were to choose to have an abortion, they would feel welcome to return because the staff at the center care about the woman and man and respect their right to make their own pregnancy decision. And I'd like to say a bit more here because this comment can feel confusing for Christians, particularly people with a strong pro-life view. We believe in giving value to and caring for both the woman and the unborn child. We understand the context of the day that abortion is a legal option for women in Canada, regardless of the stage of the pregnancy or the reason for seeking termination. And so we work within that context. We acknowledge that God has given each one of us a free will to make decisions, both good and bad, with outcomes and consequences we may not always anticipate or understand. And that applies to unexpected pregnancies as well. We are broken people living in a broken land, and the clients that cross the threshold of a pregnancy care center bring their own unique views and pressures, and also their own free will. And so we have grace for clients and one another, and we remember that we do not have control over another person's free will or choice. We do ensure that before receiving any services, all clients are made aware that the Pregnancy Care Center does not provide or assist in arranging abortions. I believe that fear or pressure is behind most abortion decisions, and this is backed by misinformation and a lack of support. Women fear they aren't financially or emotionally prepared. They may fear the loss of their dreams and a better life. They may feel embarrassed and ashamed to be pregnant. How could I have let this happen? They may feel they only have an either-or choice and can't see other possibilities. And if no one is there to encourage them to look beyond their fears, to see hope and envision a different future, they will decide based on their current circumstances and perspectives. Once I became involved in this work, women began to tell me their stories in my medical clinic and the community. I heard the hidden sorrow and regret. I was pressured into it. I didn't feel I had another choice. No one supported me. If only someone had said, "You can do this." I was surprised by what I heard and wondered why patients never returned and shared their feelings. And I realized that I never asked. It was almost like we had an unspoken agreement. It's a tough decision, and we don't need to talk about it again. I remember the day I met Sherry, a young 18-year-old woman fit in to see me for a cold. She must have known about my involvement in this work as her story quickly spilled out. She was 14 when she became pregnant, and at the time they were living with her boyfriend's mother, who forced Sherry to have an abortion that she didn't want. She said these exact words to me. "I didn't know what to do. I felt like I had no choice." She went on to say that she thought about her child every day, wondering what they would have been like. Sherry is not alone. Research underscores the frequency of abortion and the need for clear and compassionate communication regarding its impact. One study published in 2012 concludes that 1 out of 3 Canadian women will have an abortion during their lifetime. 1 out of 3. Another Canadian study based on 101 stories shared by women regarding their abortion experience found that over 2/3 of the women were pressured or coerced into having their abortion. In 2020, an Ipsos poll revealed that 77% of Canadians believe women should have access to abortion. Yet questions regarding the importance of access to abortion alternatives are not as frequently cited. In a 2010 Angus Reid poll, 31% of respondents believed that pregnant women in Canada did not have enough access to information about abortion alternatives. The realities of the stats I've shared is that our country has millions of women who have experienced an abortion, some who have experienced great regret and sorrow, and others who have not. The grief after abortion is often referred to as disenfranchised grief because the loss isn't talked about or publicly supported. We know we should care, but how we care is also important, as the grief may be hidden and individuals seeking help may not feel it's safe to share their story, even with their pastor. Those working in pregnancy care ministry may not have all the answers needed to impact culture, but we do understand the power of walking with people in their challenges, loving them in a Christ-like manner, and compassionately caring for them regardless of the choices they may make. We understand the importance of providing care with excellence, sharing medically accurate information, and finding new ways to care for the whole person. The abortion conversation should be different today than it was 40 years ago. Our audience and our understanding have changed. Today we must consider our words. Do they help build bridges to the revelation of the value of all lives and the transformative hope of the gospel? Or do we sound like a clanging cymbal, adding to the cacophony of the abortion debate? Do our words and messages make room for someone who has previously experienced an abortion? As we look around, it's impossible to miss the diversity of opinion in our nation and what feels like an ever-growing chasm between ideologies. A battlefield riddled with tripwires canceling and intolerance masquerading as progress. It's incredibly messy as the standards and rules of engagement ebb and flow with the personalities in charge. Pregnancy care centers know this unstable terrain very well. Sadly, the media and government have allowed, if not promoted, the mischaracterizations and gross inaccuracies. One may wonder how it became acceptable to vilify the efforts of pregnancy care center staff and volunteers, the frontline workers who show up in the chaos of someone's life, sit with them, listen to their stories, help them connect with other resources in their town, provide material supplies, and truly allow individuals to make an informed pregnancy decision of their choice. A few loud voices can overrepresent one bias, particularly in the social media age, and this is equally true regarding women's reproductive rights. We live in a country that claims to value freedom of speech, and so our opponents are entitled to have a different worldview and opinion. One lobby group, the Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, works relentlessly to establish its view of what it means to empower women. Yet in the name of inclusivity and diversity, they do not make room for women who may feel pressured into an unwanted abortion, or for groups that hold a different worldview, groups such as ours. As such, they lobby and malign to the extent that their efforts undoubtedly resulted in the Canada Summer Jobs Grant attestation, and more recently the Liberal mandate to remove charitable status for crisis pregnancy centres, providing the yet undefined dishonest counselling. Pregnancy Care Canada agrees that dishonest counselling is not acceptable. As a national best practice organization and stakeholder in these matters, we look forward to participating in conversations regarding a shared goal of honesty. For women to make an informed pregnancy decision and have a true choice, they must have accurate information on all their pregnancy options, and there must be support for the alternatives available to them, including alternatives to abortion. And that's what pregnancy care centers provide to Canadian women every day. And so we press on, we keep our stride, and we remember our why. We remember the ones for whom we do this, the ones seeking help at local centers or through online support, and that at the heart of the debate or unjust overreach is a person trying to navigate their way through the challenges of life. I'd like to tell you a story that I share with permission. Names and a few details have been changed for privacy. Hannah was only 15 when she found out she was pregnant. Having a child wasn't part of her plan, and yet she was intrigued. She always dreamed of being a mother and loved babies. Although frightened about how this would unfold, she was hopeful. Unfortunately, her father didn't share her enthusiasm. He was furious. He would barely speak with her, and when he did address her pregnancy, he demanded that she have an abortion. He wouldn't listen to her case for keeping her baby. Instead, he threatened to leave their family if she didn't have an abortion. Her father's lack of support crushed Hannah. She had no voice and didn't know how to navigate this. She did, however, recall seeing a billboard from her school bus window. Pregnant, alone, need help. Yes, that's me, she thought. Inside, she clung to this possible refuge of help. She jotted down the number and later dialed with anticipation. The phone rang and rang and rang. No one answered. Hannah felt some of the hope drain from her. I'll try tomorrow, she thought. Again, the same thing, an unanswered call. Each day, Hannah felt more powerless to claim her own choice, and she realized her father would get what he wanted. On the day of the abortion, she climbed into the car and gave up. She had no say. No one was asking her what she wanted, and no one was there to help. At the hospital, the process was a blur. She doesn't recall speaking with the nurse or physician. She was ushered into a sterile room and ushered out, her baby gone. A part of her died that day, and what made it even harder was the silence that descended. No one talked of this again. She was 15, traumatized, grief-stricken, and silenced, somehow feeling shame at every turn. What would it have looked like if someone had been at the end of the helpline? Hannah, I'm so glad you called today. It sounds like you're dealing with some tough circumstances. Would you like to come in and talk and work through your options? What would that have been like for a 15-year-old who felt powerless and alone? 4 decades after Hannah's experience, Sophie was 16 and in grade 11 at the local high school. She became pregnant, and Sophie was stopped in her tracks. Her father was furious, and she didn't know what to do. However, Sophie was aware of her local pregnancy care center and called the helpline in her crisis. The center director answered her call and promptly arranged a meeting. In their brief time together, the tension began to lift, and the center staff helped Sophie and her mom understand that it is very common for parents to react with anger at first, and that over time, and sometimes with outside help, their attitudes often change. Sophie and her mom also had a chance to share about the circumstances that felt overwhelming to them. By the time they left the center, they knew that help was available and that perspectives could change. Weeks later, things had settled down at home. Sophie's father had worked through his initial concerns, and the father of the baby and his parents worked on a plan to raise this little one. Sophie was excited and relieved. She continued to receive support and encouragement through the Pregnancy Care Center, was empowered to make the decision she wanted to make, delivered a beautiful baby, went on to complete her high school diploma, got her own apartment, and began her post-secondary education. There is another beautiful part to this story, a beautiful redemptive thread. The center director who answered the after-hours helpline when Sophie called, well, she was the young woman I spoke of in the first story, the young woman I called Hannah, the young girl who called for help but no one answered. 40 years later, Hannah, having been spiritually healed by the love of Christ, allowed her life to be used for the sake of others. Freely you have received, freely give. For 3 years, Hannah carried the helpline phone with her everywhere she went. She even slept with it under her pillow. She was determined that if and when a young woman might reach out, they would receive the compassionate help she so desperately needed years earlier. Jesus works in the messy places of life when his people show up and bring kingdom solutions reflecting the heart of God for each woman, each family, and each life. Real stories like this help us keep our stride and know that regardless of what may happen, for this young woman and her child, this work is worth it. But I am grateful there are many more beautiful, redemptive, legacy-building stories. In conclusion, although we may look at the injustices of this world and for different reasons feel slighted, vilified, or misrepresented, our required strength and confidence to stand firm are rooted and grounded in the gospel of Jesus Christ and him alone. He is our anchor, the Word made flesh, who joined our ranks that we may join his, to learn his ways and walk with him by the power of the Holy Spirit, and that out of the abundance of his life in us, we may bring life to others, the lost and broken, and that we may have the necessary grace to stand up when the battle causes us to feel weary, to stand firm for his glory and in confidence represent him well as hope-filled ambassadors anointed by his Spirit. Thank you for helping us keep a hope-filled, Christ-centered stride in this important and challenging work. If you'd like to walk with us, we'd love the company. You can access resources and learn more about what we do at our website, pregnancycarecanada.ca, and stay in touch by signing up for our bi-monthly newsletter. Thank you for your time.